BRN, where educators share what works.
So I've got a really touchy question to ask, and I guess I'll be the first to answer it in full disclosure. Has anybody thoroughly looked at or read the terms of service of ChatGPT?
Yeah.
I know I just clicked okay, I agree, and never really went through it at all.
And I think that's what happens. For my personal use, do I read everything at home? No. I think we feel if it's an education app, then it will protect student privacy, that it's okay to use.
Well, hello, everybody. Nice to see you all again. How are you doing?
Good, thanks. Good to see you again.
So, Julie, I hope you don't mind me passing this along, but Dan and Caroline, as we were leaving last week, Julie pulled me aside in the parking lot, and she shared with me that as much as she's excited to think about all the applications of AI for grading, which of course is what we talked about last week, she had some concerns about privacy issues and what it means to be uploading student work into the cloud, so to speak. And I said to her, like, well, I know what we're talking about next week over coffee. So Julie, start off with what are your concerns? And I think they're really valid. I think you've got some interesting points there.
So my role at Ulster BOCES in New York is that of data privacy officer. So that means taking a look at the data and ways in which we are protecting students' PII, personal identifiable information, and teachers' APPR for assessing. In other words, that we're not giving away information about teachers' evaluations. And so that is a concern when we're looking at tools that we want to use, and I want us to use them, and I want students to know of them. How do we also safeguard our students from these tools? And even if the students aren't using it, all the information that we're uploading that students have created, and we're doing it on our network, our school networks. So that makes me pause as a privacy officer.
So one of the things that I've thought about, especially over the course of the last week, I know students need to be of a certain age when they are engaging with a tool like ChatGPT. Could schools write it into their internet usage policy that typically shows up in a school handbook, and then parents sign off on that, saying, yes, my child's going to use the internet appropriately while they're at school? I mean, otherwise, we would have to get permission from every single various tool that we use.
Yes.
I mean, the internet itself can be a dangerous tool. I personally don't understand how AI is that much more significantly dangerous than just the rest of the internet.
I agree with you 110%. And I'm noticing through different organizations that I belong to that they are creating digital citizenship policies. So, yes, so I think a couple of things. When introducing anything in regards to technology, what is our digital citizenship policy? How are we teaching digital citizenship to our students so they understand privacy and they're taking the ownership, but that us as adults were also modeling that for them? So yes, Dan, are we putting in some policies? Are we also putting in some data filtration? And then are we paying attention to what's happening with the American Data Privacy and Protection Acts to help with the provisions on algorithms? So I'm going to go with yes, yes, and yes, Dan. Wait, another yes. I don't know. You said a couple of A's.
So I just pendulum swung from Julie speaking, and I decided, I might not use AI with my students at all, to Dan speaking and saying, oh, it's okay. I think I'm going to use it again. We talked about Turnitin last week, and Turnitin transparently says to teachers and students that everything that is uploaded to Turnitin to check for plagiarism will also be logged in Turnitin's databases to continue to be checked against plagiarism in the future. So we almost have a culture now of the student work that we put through the internet being logged. I guess what makes me uncomfortable is this black box component of AI, that we're not really sure what it's doing or what it's logging. So I've got a really touchy question to ask, and I guess I'll be the first to answer it in full disclosure. Has anybody thoroughly looked at or read the terms of service of ChatGPT?
Yeah.
I know I just clicked okay, I agree, and never really went through it at all.
And I think that's what happens for my personal use. Do I read everything at home? No. I do check off on things. And then sometimes I wonder, where did these emails come from? Yes, my data is being farmed out to a third party or a this or that. And so in education, it's so important to read everything. But the other thing, and I remember this came through K-12 EdTech magazine, it has to be the responsibility of everybody, not just the teachers, everybody in the school, making sure we're paying attention to this. And there was something else I was going to say, and it just went out of my head. It'll come back.
Julie, I just want to throw this comment out there that, a lot of times we are very concerned about, how we handle things. And I totally get that. We are professionals in the classroom, and that we're worried about, what if a parent finds out that I had their child use ChatGPT? Thing is, their 12-year-old is already on TikTok.
Yes.
And they're okay with it. They set up the account.
Yes.
And they're friends with their child on TikTok. And so a lot of these, social media sites have the same policy that a child has to be at least 14 years or older. Yet, as a school, we're freaking out that, oh my gosh, what if they touch AI? I'm going to get sued. I don't know that the parents are as educated about AI and its uses as what we're afraid of.
I think we feel if it's an education app, then it will protect student privacy, that it's okay to use. I think what we're also forgetting is not so much am I going to get in trouble from the parents. I think we're forgetting that schools, hospitals are ripe for ransomware, for places to pick at. And every incident or conference I went to, it's not if your school is going to be attacked and have a breach, it's when. And so then the other policies that have to be in place are, what are your data recovery policies? You Google it. You will see that how many schools have just shut down and couldn't use the internet because of ransomware.
Caroline, what say you? You've been a consistent advocate for AI. I guess that's true of all of us here, but do you have any concerns around privacy and what we might be having our students do?
I do, and this is all new territory that we're not familiar with, and it's coming up so fast. The difference, Tom, you and I, we're at universities, so our students are above 18, so we don't have the same kind of issues that Julie and Dan do at schools with regards to permissions. I mentioned this a couple of cafes ago. I think we're going to see walled garden systems being offered to schools, which are closed off. They're, closed environments which are safer, I think, than just these open AI bots that we're using at the moment. I think we'll see institutional agreements come in with the companies. They're not offering them at the moment, where you can choose, where I would think you'd be able to choose how much of your information goes in or not. I can see this coming up, I would think, relatively soon, but I don't think that exists as such at the moment.
As Julie and Dan were talking, I'm not so worried. And you hit the nail on the head, Caroline. It is because our students are adults already. Yeah. But I do have concerns that are amplified after hearing everyone here talk about the morality, the ethics of me asking my students to use a tool that no one quite fully understands yet. I was running a workshop for faculty at my institution recently, and one of my colleagues and one of the participants equated AI to fire, and I think it's a perfect metaphor. There's so much good you can do with it, but so much harm that it could potentially do as well. And I think really the question boils down to, do I want to introduce a new form of fire? Dan, to your point, they're already embracing fire in other forms. Certainly there's a lot of dangerous apps out there that's harvesting their information, but do I want to be involved in introducing them to a new form of fire that may allow them to cook their food more efficiently, but could also allow them to burn their house down more efficiently? And I don't know. I didn't know before this conversation, and I still don't know yet.
I would say that's every new innovation. Absolutely every new innovation. Yeah. Can bring good and bad.
So a related concern to this is, and this is outside my sphere, Julie and Dan, this is more in your sphere, but it's an article I read not too long ago. There are so many GAF schools out there right now, Google Apps for Education. And when you are a student at a GAF school, your Google account is firewalled from the larger Google metastructure. Your information's not being harvested, your emails are not being read. And for people that don't know, when you have a Gmail account, all your emails are being read by Google and being analyzed, and metadata is being pulled from them. But when a student is about to graduate high school, so they're presumably over 18 and they're no longer a member of that school district, they get a notification from Google saying you have one of two options. You can convert your school account to a personal account and keep all of your Google Drive files, keep all of your emails, everything that you have in that account, or you can rescind that offer and everything gets deleted. Most students choose to accept because, one, it's free, and two, they've got, 12 years of learning artifacts and correspondence and information that might be valuable to them. But as soon as they click OK to that school account becomes a personal account, which means all of the information in there can be harvested by Google. All of those emails can be read, all of those files in Google Drive can be read, all that information can be harvested to create the algorithm composite of a human being that Google uses to feed advertisements to you. So it's not specific to AI, but it's that idea of, I didn't really know that was going to happen. Like, I'm not so comfortable with that. We advocated for these tools as educators, and it might be causing a significant loss of privacy within our students that no one anticipated. And that makes me uncomfortable.
Tom, it actually is part of AI, and I've noticed it too. A few years ago when Google changed their, Google Workspace or Google whatever, you can toggle off on your different accounts. So people don't recognize they might have their personal and their work account open at the same time, so that you can actually merge those files and see those files. And you're right, so at that time, Google is now doing all their wonderful AI in the background, and you might notice that as you're starting to type things, more and more it's giving you predictive text based on the way in which you speak. So it has been happening for a while in the background. Google has had wonderful AI experiments going on for years. That's how we're getting all that predictive text, right? Like when you start typing something, it's because it's been collecting that data all along, because we said, okay, it's kind of like just part of life, right? I use Netflix. There's a difference in my Netflix account than my husband's, and I can tell when he's been on my account. I get these different movies. I'm like, hey, wait a minute.
Well, I mean, that's the story of the human condition. I love the planet. I hate that the planet is dying, but I eat beef and I drive a car. This is the trade-off for our modern technologies, our modern society.
Well, I think we just need to be cautious. That's all. Just need to think of what are our policies, and we need to be transparent.
So, what are you all doing personally to protect privacy? Maybe we can harvest some ideas there of things we can implement in the classroom, but are any of you kind of safeguarding anything? I'll be the first to admit I'm doing nothing to protect my privacy. I have a very laissez-faire attitude in general. It'll all work out, is kind of how I walk through life, and I've been putting anything and everything into AI as I need to, so I haven't really been doing anything in terms of privacy.
I will echo that. in that I have a rule of life that is, don't do dumb things.
But you still meet us for coffee.
Like, don't look up things that are going to get you in trouble. I mean, just don't do dumb things. Don't put dumb things into AI. How to build something nefarious. And like, it's just use your brain and realize that if you're doing anything online, you're doing it in a public setting. And if you treat it as a public setting, then it kind of alters how you're going to interact with it. Because there are plenty of things that we may, think, but we don't say them. And same thing with the internet. You may, be curious about something, but you don't put it online. And just having that rule of thumb of don't post dumb things, don't research dumb things. And I mean, it just kind of covers a wide range. And so I'm not looking necessarily to protect what I've generated, but I'm trying to make sure that what I generate would be beneficial for whoever interacts.
I try my best to keep my work computer, my home devices. So I'm not mixing my data. Do I always do that? No. But I really try my best to separate them, and I think that's really important.
So I've recently finished writing a book, and I used ChatGPT a lot to improve on the writing. Now, one of my concerns is ChatGPT could pretty much now print that book off. It's got everything from my head in it. So I've got questions about intellectual property, and this is especially important in universities. If you're working on patents and, research, this is not something you want out there in the public sphere. And I know a number of companies are not allowing their employees to put, proprietary information into open bots like this. I think, again, we're going to need something at universities where I would feel more comfortable using a closed AI bot to write things like books in future that could just be picked up from everything I've input. And all that work I've put into it could just be taken immediately. So I'm really going to start looking into walled garden AI bots. I think we're going to need them for schools. I think we're going to need them for universities and for personal situations as well. And I think we're going to start seeing different types of products of AI bots being offered to us where you can choose where your information goes to. And I think we need to start reading all the terms and conditions a lot more so we really understand what's happening.
But even those walled garden bots, they sound good, but who's guarding the wall? How natty is that wall? There's still going to be these concerns of what does a walled garden bot really mean? Are things being harvested in the background and being disaggregated, but still going into the probabilistic algorithm?
Right. One thing I just thought of, Caroline, as you were saying, that is an app that I use personally, and I'm trying to actually get it moved into our school, is Virtru, Virtru. Someone introduced it to me. So it's data filtration, because I noticed that even if I'm purchasing something or a company is asking me, just send us your personal information. I'm like, I'm not comfortable doing that via email. But the thing that's cool about it is it does have an AI feature that will kind of recognize like certain keywords in there, right? And say, hey, before you send this seems like something you should encrypt. So whether I toggle on that this is something private or not as I send it, or it's in my drive, because I use Google more, it has that feature. So that's a very comfortable use of AI for me. So that's one app that I'm using.
That's cool, really cool, and very apropos. Caroline and Dan, what have you been up to for new tools, tricks, or tips?
I tell you one thing I'm really interested at the moment. I talked about these AI detector tools like Turnitin and how I really don't agree with how they work. I find them unethical. But in my upcoming course this semester, we're going to be I'm actually going to get my students, we're going to work on a project where they're going to write something without AI, write something with AI, and we're going to try out all these different tools and then say, based on our experience, how accurate we think they are for actually detecting AI or not, based on our own knowledge of how we've created the work ourselves.
I really don't have a new tool that I've been digging into, but I do have like a new use for a previous tool that I mentioned, Midjourney. I saw a post online about using it for descriptive writing, and because it's an image generator, the example that they gave was the Gruffalo, having kids write up the description of the Gruffalo and see what Midjourney creates out of that description. And it just teaches kids how to be more descriptive, or, is what they're envisioning, did they describe it well? And so I think that that's a really interesting way of using an image generator in even an ELA class.
I love it. That's so cool.
And I think, again, that just all goes back to the learning. I think everything that we talk about, whenever we meet, and it's just all about the learning.
So the one, like Dan, the one tip I wanted to share, it's not a new tool, but it's a new application of ChatGPT itself. I can't tell you how excited I was when I thought to do this and how well it worked. I don't know if everybody is in this boat, but oftentimes I need to make multiple versions of an exam just to make sure that students who are sitting close together in a classroom can't see what each other is writing, or if I want to reuse an exam a following year, I really can't because those exams are now floating around. And I'm always frustrated because my first writing of an exam is usually my best, and when I have to change it in order to make it different to create a new version, I always feel like I either lose clarity or I lose focus on the topics, and I just hate writing multiple versions. Very time consuming, and I always feel like I'm losing the core of what I was trying to test for in the first version. So I got the idea this year when I sat down to make multiple versions. I was dreading that, making the first unit exam, to just copy my questions and paste them into ChatGPT. And it took a few iterative prompts, but finally the prompt that worked, I said, rephrase these questions completely while maintaining the core meaning as much as possible. And in 45 seconds, ChatGPT had a brand new exam that was different enough that I'm convinced that students with an old exam wouldn't benefit with the new exam, but the learning concepts being assessed for were identical. And so that was just a huge time saver. Not only did it save me the time of drafting the version, but it did a far better job of maintaining the core of what I was trying to accomplish than I could have ever done. So I thought that was really, really helpful.
And Tom, I'm just going to say, it's a phrase I continue to use. You outsource the doing, not the knowledge. So, I mean, you're still looking over those questions and saying, are these retaining the core principles of what I'm trying to assess? But you outsource the doing of having to recreate everything.
Absolutely.
I've been doing something very similar, Tom, actually, with flipped learning, with my pre-class quiz questions. So I'm using ChatGPT it's helping me create my narratives for the videos, and then I use that to create the pre-class quiz questions. But then in class, I like to do like a Mentimeter quiz with my students at the start of the lesson, just to make it a bit fun, wake everyone up and think back to the content before. And the same thing, I can just get ChatGPT to rewrite those questions slightly while still having the same learning outcomes, and it makes it more interesting for the students. So it's a really useful tool.
Awesome. So, folks, looks like we've got a different kind of coffee meeting today. The last few times we've met, I have to admit, I left completely jazzed and excited to get back into the classroom and try some tricks and tools. I guess I'm leaving a lot more reflective today. I think we've got some food for thought. Like any innovation, there's going to be pluses and minuses to AI in the classroom. There's going to be good uses and bad, and I appreciate the perspective you've all given in just needing to be a little bit more diligent and a little bit more thoughtful about how I implement these tools and the impacts they might have on our students. So thank you all, as always. Have a great week, everybody. I'll see you later.
See you. Bye, everyone.
You can see links to all the tools mentioned in this episode in the show notes. Thanks for listening.